Welcome back to the generic crafting video tutorial series. In this second episode, we're going to be making our debug HUD that'll show an event log whenever anything happens in the world, which is pretty much going to replace our print string functionality. We're also going to be printing this to the log in case you need it in your logs. And this is kind of a personal preference of mine, something you don't really need to do for the project. But I like to do this for most of my projects. It kind of helps me read the log in real time and see everything that has happened. So let's get right into it. The first thing I'm going to do is create a new folder in my generic crafting. I'm going to call this UI. I'm going to make another new folder inside of UI called Debug HUD. Okay. Inside of Debug HUD, I'm going to make another new folder, and we're going to call this EventLog. And inside of the actual Debug HUD folder, we're going to create our user interface widget blueprint, user widget. We're going to call this w_debug HUD. I'm going to open that up, minimize it. Inside of our event log folder, we're going to create two widgets. The first is going to be another widget blueprint, user widget. We're going to call this w_event_log. I'm going to duplicate that and call it w_event log tile. And we're going to open up all of these. Let's start with the debug HUD. For this, I'm going to need a canvas panel. Drag that right in here. I'm going to need a w_event log. This is going to be the actual event log. That's just kind of always going to be on this debug panel. You can make that as big or as small as you want. I'm going to make mine about that size. We're going to drop the anchor to the lower left, and we're going to plop it right in there. That seems like a good size to me. That's all we actually need to do in the designer for now. And we don't need any of this stuff. We only need one custom event in here to manage this. And this is going to be new event log. This is going to get our W event log. And we're going to have to call two different functions from here. But first, we'll just set the visibility to visible. And this is kind of something you can do if you want to like run a delay afterwards. Or a timer of like maybe you only want this to be visible for like 10 seconds. And then you want to change the visibility to hidden. That's something you could totally do here. I know that's a way a lot of people like to do their event logs. That way it's just kind of collapsing itself. But we don't actually need to do any of that since it's visible by default. And we'll just keep it visible for the entire time. So we need a function inside of our event log to actually make this new event log happen. I'm going to go into my graph here. I'm going to make a custom event called DisplayMessage. And that is going to take a message value of text or string, whichever you prefer. We're just going to do text here to keep it simple. We're going to call that message. Now, if you're doing like, you want to have everything set up for multiple languages, you're probably going to want to use a string table and make sure that you're passing in a string here. But I think text works just fine. So inside of our debug HUD, we're actually going to go ahead and call that. So we're going to call DisplayMessage, pass it into the new event log function, and add the pin for message. That way we're passing the message straight into the display message here. Okay, nice and simple. That's all we need to do inside of our debug HUD for now. Let's go ahead and make our event log. In the designer here, we're just going to add a scroll box right in here. Make sure you set it to isVariable. And we're going to call this sblog. Or whatever you want. You can keep it called scrollbox log, just call it log, whatever you desire here. Doesn't really matter too much. We also want to change our fill screen here to desired. That way it's going to pop up in this amount of space. Whatever we set this up to is going to be what it pops up to. Now inside of this display message, we need to go ahead and create our event log tile. So we're going to create a widget called event log tile. We're going to promote this to a variable, and we're going to call this log tiles. I'm going to go ahead and delete that set, because in this log tiles, we need to make this an array. Compile, save. Get our log tiles. Add this new log tile that we're creating whenever we need a new display message to this log tiles array. That way we just kind of have it. You don't necessarily need to do this because we're never actually going to be recalling any of these log tiles to do anything. But maybe if you wanted to have them set up to destroy themselves or something, or change, or do whatever, you could have this here. But we're not actually going to use it for anything. It's just kind of a personal preference for me that I actually have that here. We're going to take our scroll box log. I'm going to add child. That child is going to be this log tile widget. And then we're going to take our scroll box log and scroll to the end. That way the last message is always the one at the bottom, and it's going to make sure that is properly displayed. Okay. Again, if you wanted to not have your log tiles in an array here, that's totally fine. But if you decide later, maybe you want to save all of your messages, right? You could get all your log tiles, run a for each, and I'll show you real quick what we're going to build inside log tiles before I get carried away. So we're going to take our log tile. Our log tile is also going to be desired, and this is literally just going to be text. So we're going to take in a text block, put it in here, and make sure it's a variable. Doesn't really matter too much. Actually, doesn't even need to be a variable, if we're being honest. We can just leave it not variable. Totally up to you. I'll just leave mine not variable. We're going to go into our graph here, and we're going to make a single string or a single text value called message. Again, if you're using strings in a string table, you'll want to make sure it's a string. I'm just going to make it text for now. That way it's just text. That's going to be instanced and exposed. That way every single time we make an event log tile, we have to pass in a message. Now we're going to come back into the designer, take this text, and bind it to message. That way it's always message. So it doesn't actually need to be a variable. If you wanted to make it a variable, you could pull this out and say set text. But we're going to be keeping the message value for now. So inside of our event log, now we can see that when we create this widget, it's going to require that message. So we're going to pass that right on through. Nothing here needs to change. But like I said, if you wanted to keep the log tiles for some reason, we're not actually going to be doing this in our game. But if for whatever reason you wanted to make like a printable log or a saved log, you would drag out of this array element, get message, and save that. So you would make an array of messages inside of your save game and go ahead and save all of those messages to that array. If that's something you want to do. Otherwise, we don't actually use log tiles for anything, this array. But I'm going to keep it around just because I like to keep it around. Just personal preference, I guess. Anyway, that is our event log. So, like I said, we go into the debug HUD. We just drop the widget for event log in there. We have our new event log, which displays the message. We have our event log tile, which is just text, which is bound to message, which is instance and exposed. And we have our event log, which is just a scroll box container that holds all of these messages. Okay, pretty simple there. One other thing you could do if you really wanted to is maybe wrap this with a horizontal box and give it a spacer or give it some padding. I'm not too worried about that here. I think it's perfectly fine the way it is. You could also wrap it if you want. Totally up to you. Center it. That's going to be something you have to decide on your own. So in order to use all this stuff, we need to actually call it from somewhere. I'm actually going to do that from the player controller, and we'll get to why here in just a second. Alright, now inside of our player controller, I'm going to go ahead and delete all this stuff. This is our custom player controller. Now I like doing my widgets inside of the player controller because it's a nice central location where I can kind of keep valid references to all of them, make adjustments as I need to on the fly, and I can also do something which is called always local player controller. So when you're doing multiplayer widgets, you need to make sure that only the locally controlled player is actually displaying the widgets. I know this game isn't multiplayer, but this is a design habit that I'm pretty particular on lately, and I wanted to go ahead and teach it right now. So we're going to get, or not get, is local player controller. And this little node right here is going to be basically what defines if this is a local player controller or not. So off of true, we're going to do stuff. Off of false, we're not going to do stuff. So I'm actually going to make a macro here for this. That way it's nice and easy. I can use it as many times as I want. I don't have to do that every single time. I'm going to call this always local player controller. And this is going to be very simple macro here. This is just going to be is local player controller. And we're just going to run that into a branch. And we're just going to run the true to the out instead of true. That's fine if we just call it true. And that's it. That's all we're going to do here. Like I said, it's nothing complicated. It's just kind of so I don't have to do this every single time. I'm going to remove that. Drag that out. I'm going to make a custom event here. And this event is going to be called DisplayDebugHud. Okay. DisplayDebugHud is going to do this always a local player controller. We are always doing it on the local player controller. We're going to come down here. We're going to create a widget not connected to true of DebugHud. And we're going to promote this to a variable DebugHud. We're going to give it the category widgets, that way everything is nice and clean. And then we're going to drag it out and get it. Is valid. So we want to make sure that basically this is always valid whenever we need to do something in the debug HUD. If it's not valid, we're going to go ahead and create it. If it is valid, we're going to go ahead and pass. And we're going to take our debug HUD. So actually, I'll call this W. It's going to bother me if I don't have it as W. And we're going to add it to the player screen. You can add it to viewport if you want. It doesn't make too much of a difference. This is something for local multiplayer. You'll need to add it to the player screen. But it doesn't really make too much of a difference if you add it to the viewport of the player screen here, since we're not doing multiplayer anyway. So I'm going to take that, make sure we use this reference. Again, not this one. Same as with the save. If we were to pass this one through, and we already had a valid debug HUD reference, it wouldn't actually take it. It would kind of break it. Okay. So that's all we're going to do here for display HUD. I'm going to make one little event here. Remove. I really should have zoomed in before I tried to type. RemoveDebugHud, which is going to do the same thing. Always local player controller. It's going to get our debug HUD. If our debug HUD is valid, it's going to remove it from the parent. And this is just in case you want to get that debug HUD off of your screen for any reason. Maybe you're opening up another widget. That's going to kind of remove that debug HUD from your screen. Okay. So now we have our DisplayDebugHud and our RemoveDebugHud. We need to do one more thing here for now. And if we add more stuff to our debug HUD later, we'll have to do more stuff later. We're going to add a custom event here, and this is going to be AddEventLog. And this is how we're going to add that event log every single time we need it. Again, always local player controller. Get a valid debug HUD. I could have copied both of those if I wanted to. Pass that through. If it's false, display the debug HUD. Either way, we're going to say new event log, which is that function we made inside of the debug HUD. So we're going to pass that through on valid. Whoops. And we're going to pass that through when we create this. Again, using the debug HUD reference here. Now we need our message. I'm going to drag that all the way over to here. That way we have our message coming in through AddEventLog. I'm going to caption all this. I'm going to comment it and say, just highlight over it, press C, and that way you can have a comment. HUD events. We don't necessarily need to do this, but it just kind of helps keep everything nice and clean. I'm also going to collapse these. We'll call it HUD events. We really didn't need to do, not events W. Call it HUD events. That way in our event graph here, we have this little HUD events, and we don't have 50 million events inside of our event graph that are just kind of uncategorized. This is just a way to help keep events categorized for me. Okay. So now that we've done all that, we actually need to call this DisplayDebugHud from somewhere. And I'm going to do that right in here in the player controller custom on event BeginPlay. Instead of doing it from the player. You could do it from the player if you wanted to, but I'm just going to do it from event BeginPlay. So we don't actually need this always local player controller on the event BeginPlay, but I'm going to put it here anyway. Because again, the HUD is already calling this. But if we want to do other stuff later on, we will want to make sure it's always locally controlled. Like I said before, I always try to delay until next tick, especially on event BeginPlay. That way everything is kind of set up already, and I don't have to worry too much about race conditions. And I'm going to display the debug HUD. So when the event, when the game starts, when the game starts, we're going to load up the debug HUD. Okay. And I'm actually just going to make this comment a little bit bigger. I'm going to put my HUD events in there. So right now, even if I start the game, there's not going to be anything in here. Okay. So I need a way to add an event log. And I'm going to do that via the bpfl custom. This is that function library we made last time, and this is so that anywhere in the game that we are, we can call this bpfl add event log. I'm going to give this a category as well. We're going to call it event log. And this is where we're going to do the fun stuff. We're going to get player controller. If I can spell player. We're going to get our player controller. We're going to cast it to the player controller custom. Now, if you really wanted to get nitty gritty, I guess you could do an interaction event here, but player controller is always going to be relevant to our gameplay, so there's no reason not to cast. We're going to take our message value for AddEventLog from the player controller. We're just going to pass in message, but I'm going to get message. Ugh, if I can type today. I'm going to get that message out here, just so it's a little bit cleaner. And then we're going to do one more thing. We're going to log it. And this is different from print string, where this just goes directly into the game logs. So it's not going to print it to a window. It's just going to go into the log. So we're going to go ahead and convert this message to a string and say print to log true. Again, this is just so like maybe the game crashes and you want to see all of the event logs that you placed in there. It's going to go ahead and log those in that crash log or in your gameplay log. So it's kind of just like print string, where print string would have print to log. This is literally just that. It's just printing it to the log. So that's what we're going to do. Okay, that is our add event log. That's all we need to do here. So now anytime we do anything that we want to have an event log for, that I want to print a string for pretty much, I'm going to use this. Now I may still print strings here and there for certain things, but like these savings, all this stuff, I'm going to use event log. So I'm going to come in here, I'm going to say add event log. It's going to take in this message. So I'm going to control copy that. And now we're going to have that. Okay, now it's going to say saving ... We're going to do the same thing down here. So I'm going to add, duplicate this a couple of times. I'm going to format the text here. I'm going to say async saved game. I'm going to add curly brackets, S, which doesn't really matter too much. I'm going to say select text. Again, just the same thing we're doing up here, except with text instead of strings. If you set it up to be strings, then you'll just do it as strings instead of text. Pretty simple. So off of completed, we're going to say that we either success or failed to save the game. And same thing here. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that, delete that, plug that in, and remove this little part that says async. Okay, that's all we're going to do here. That is just so that now when we save the game and stuff, our event log is going to be added. Okay. It's going to be doing all that instead. I don't think we logged anything up here. And we did not. So let's actually see that in action. Like I said, if we press play now, nothing's going to happen. We don't actually call that from anywhere. But we will be calling it a lot later on. So for now, we'll go into our player. We'll just add a key 1. And we will just add event log. Something happened. ... And then we will also call save game. We'll call our try save game from the bpfl that we made in the last episode, just to show that in action. So when I press play here and I press 1, something happened, saving ... async game saved success. Okay. And that's never going to go away. That's always going to be right there in our log. So yeah. If we go into our output log here, we're also going to see the log blueprint user message. So it is properly showing in our output log as well. Okay, so we don't actually need this. I'm going to go ahead and delete it. And yeah, that is our event log. So you'll see that in action plenty throughout this video. It's pretty much what I'm going to be using to log everything that happens instead of using print strings. Again, it's just a personal preference of mine. Not something you necessarily have to do, but I wanted to get that out of the way early. That way we all kind of understand what's going on as we make this tutorial series. Thanks for watching. I hope you liked the video. In the next episode, we'll actually go through and get into some more details about making the items themselves. If you're enjoying the videos so far, I urge you to join our Patreon. For just $3 a month, you'll get access to all of the videos in this series as soon as I create them. Always available on Patreon, always free, and ready to go. You'll also get a copy of the example project so you can follow along step by step with a real visual guide in the project.